Well, part 6 of this inevitably ending series. I just wanted to say thank you again for the involvement we've had, as well. We recently re-overhauled the server, if that makes sense. We overhauled the submission channel. We've split it into discussions and submissions. So now there are 2 channels. You join the server, post your weapon ideas and discuss them in the discussion channel. People can help you to balance them out, and then once they're perfect, send them into the submissions channel. This will be the first video we've made since that overhauling, and on that note again, I'd like to apologise as to it took so long for that to be overhauled. 2 more things I have to say before we begin. Sorry, I know it's been a while since I've made one of these, but you know, I've been busy. But I promise they will be weekly, they'll be 28 minutes apiece, and I'm never going to stop this series. And the second one being the weekly challenge winner. Last time we made one of these, the weekly challenge was to design a medic primary focused on offense, and it was a very difficult one, as most people in the server admitted. My philosophy for this idea was that something maybe the medic could use that would deal extra damage, yet in exchange for less healing, or something along those lines, and Sean 195114 absolutely delivered. You might be thinking an offensive medic primary kind of defeats the purpose of medic, yet I ask you, as a medic player, how much passive healing would you be willing to give up to live another day? Sean answered this question perfectly, and well done to him. Enjoy your special role in the server. This week's weekly challenge is to design a new drink for the scout. You know, it could be a soda can, or it could be a mad milk-like substance, but obviously try to make it balanced the best it can. As of now, the submissions channel is open, and you have 48 hours to submit. Okay, well, very long intro. Sorry about that. Let's get started. So, the Velocity Vortex is our first weapon today. Alt firing while the projectile is travelling will cause you to teleport to its current location. This comes at the cost of less ammo, so about 25%, so 25% of 16, that would mean you have around 12 ammo, and no damage whatsoever. This is a strictly utility-based secondary. Okay, well, right off the bat, I'm going to say, I love this. It might seem difficult to implement, but then again, the sheer idea of just having that ability to teleport, for example, you could shoot this out, let it travel a little bit, and still be attacking the enemy, and then just right-click, you know, to escape last minute would be incredibly good. As to how overpowered this thing might be, I don't know. What I would do to change it specifically is I would shorten the range on the projectile, so you can't just teleport infinitely across the map. And I'd also make it so that you have to hold the weapon in order to teleport. But honestly, as a base idea, this is really cool. Maybe not so much for Pyro, because he's already got lots of, you know, movement tech stuff and whatnot. But maybe something like Scout or whatnot would really use this? I don't know. Long story short, this weapon has a lot of potential, and that's why I think it's great. Okay, well, I guess before we start, I should probably explain this new revamped tier list. So, 2 strong, balanced, weak, 2 weak, those haven't changed at all. However, then we have 2 bottom tiers. We have potential, as in this maybe 1 or 2 changes could make it really good, or just a minor rework. And then we have need of rework. This is 100% could not function in the game as is. Maybe because it's overpowered, maybe because, you know, it'll be difficult to implement, any of the sort. Then we have the big head tier. Now let me explain this. So to use this, to use tier lists, you upload the base images, and the base images will be in every single tier list. However, because there's over 300 submissions, and the base images for the first ever video were only 5, that would mean I'd have 5 weapons that appeared in the first video every single time, and then the other new ones. You can't stack them on top of each other. It's a bit confusing, but if you've used Tier Maker before, you know what I'm talking about. So we have the big head tier. The big head tier will appear in every single tier list, but just completely and utterly ignore it. And with that being said, we had some quite wordy ones today, so I'm actually struggling to find the right one. I think it's this one. I'm going to put it in strong. Remember, how this works is like a dartboard. You're aiming, forget all these tiers down here, you're aiming for balanced. You can get it, the rings outside of it, but it's like a dartboard. So this is what you want, and then these 2 are fine, these 2 are not great, and then these 2 are miscellaneous tiers. So, dartboard, aiming for there, but sometimes you might shoot a weapon idea into different tiers, and it's fine. For now, I'm going to put this in strong, purely because it just needs some more wordly tweaking. For example, you know, you have to hold the weapon to have it active, all that kind of stuff. Our next one here is interesting. It's called the SN Escaper, and it's essentially just the escape plan but for medic. That's coupled with the fact of -2 self-healing. So, I would like to start another series. I know I'm incredibly good at starting series, just never finishing them. Of essentially giving other weapons to other classes and seeing who would end up being the strongest with said weapon. And the escape plan is one of the ones I've been thinking of. Obviously Scout, you know, if it's anything speed related, Scout would be incredibly good at using it, but then again he'd also get destroyed by heavies. Now, the medic with the escape plan is not something I had actually ever considered before. But I think this would be an incredibly good idea as a weapon, because medics need more survivability, and we also need other weapons that aren't just the Ubersaw. From when I made my Ubersaw rebalancing video, it turns out there are people I found out that still don't think the Ubersaw is overpowered. They think it's absolutely fine as is. No, you're wrong, it is overpowered. And it's not the case of the Ubersaw isn't overpowered, you know, medics' other weapons are underpowered. No, it's actually a mix of both. The Ubersaw is overpowered, and medics' other weapons are underpowered. And honestly, I think this is a great start to move towards that direction. -2 self-healing is a bit of a shame, but then again, you get to live. What would you rather have, a couple extra health here and there, or the ability to live to see another day? I can already tell this weapon's going to be a place of contention, but I'm actually putting it in balanced. I can already tell some people are not going to be happy with this one, but I think it's fine. I really do. Honestly, we'd all like to see some sort of flame retardant kit implemented for Spy, and I don't think this is too bad of a way to go about it. So let me explain the wording on this one. Basically, flames are invisible on you. You still take the fire damage, but it's resisted by 33%, and you don't have any visual difference from when being on fire. Maybe the pyro still gets a triggered sound effect when you light someone on fire or something, I'm not too sure. But either way, the enemy team and your own team can't see that you're burning. And just like the candy cane, like father like son, this comes at the cost of a 25% vulnerability to explosive damage. Now, do we think this thing's balanced or not? First of all, I just want to say this is an incredibly original and cool idea, well, from what I've heard anyway. I don't know, it might be in Team Classic or something. A lot of weapons last time around were also in TF Classic, and some people got mad about that. But to that I say, I don't make them when I don't play TF Classic. But this idea is really cool. This is what this series was made for. And as to how balanced I think it would be, well, obviously, let's talk about the negative first, the explosive damage. That is a problem. That's a problem for Spy, because that means he would be one-shot by pipes and other things like that, just like Scout with the candy cane. Yet at the same time, completely countering one of his hard counters. I don't know if it's worth it. Spent a good few minutes thinking about this one, actually. I'm honestly going to pop it into balanced. I really am. I know that downside is massive, I know. But if you're carrying something like the Dead Ringer, for example, then it's not too bad of a deal. And plus, when you're invisible, you get a damage resistance to everything to an extent, so that's always nice. But this is just such a cool weapon idea that I can't put it anywhere else. I've said this many times before, and I'll say it again to avoid sounding like a fixed record, but in the absence I took from TF2, I came back and everyone on Earth seems to be in love with Gunspy. A Gunspy weapon is obviously something we're lacking, and would be a really cool idea to implement as, well, it's technically a subclass. It's a subclass that doesn't really need any specific weapons to make it a subclass like Demo Knight or, you know, any of the others. It's a subclass that could be created purely by just altering some damage numbers on an existing weapon, and that's why I think it's actually quite cool. Now, the Gunman's Bargain here simply does more damage in exchange for smaller clip size and less cloak on wearer. I'm assuming your primary objective as a Gunspy would be to stick pretty close to the cart. I don't play Spy, as you could probably tell, but nevertheless, I think this is actually a really good idea. I've gone on record before telling everyone that I just don't care for Gunspy, and I don't. But a lot of people like it, and therefore I'm not about to just dismiss it entirely. Now, honestly, I'm fine with this. Maybe an extra 35% damage is a little bit strong, but then again, the base revolver only does like 50, 60 damage. That's not an awful lot. The base revolver is not very good. I know everyone says it is. It's not. So, honestly, I'm going to pop this into balanced. I think it's fine. I think so far, these are the best weapons we've had. The Hermes boots seem difficult to implement. Running forward for a straight 3 seconds gives you a 37% speed boost and removes fall damage. And the downsides are that the speed boost ends when you stop holding W or you take knockback, and it comes with a base 10% speed reduction. Now, I'm not here to belittle or to mock, as education is a good part of this channel, as you know, more people need to learn more things about more things in general. However, what some people don't know is that all weapons in TF2 deal a base amount of knockback, be it bullets or blasts or whatever. So literally any attack, be it bullets, be it whatever, would count as knockback to an extent and therefore would reset this speed boost. I don't know if the creator of this knew that, and that's fine. And if they did, I don't know if they're purely talking about blast knockback, or maybe it caps at a certain point. For example, a point blank scattergun shot would deal knockback but maybe some off-range bullets wouldn't. I'm not too sure. But we're going to take it on face value, and as is, this physically could not be implemented into the game whatsoever, as knockback exists in every single form. So, for the sake of entertainment, I will say, let's consider, for example, that we're only talking blast knockback. How strong would this thing be? Probably quite strong, as you're not really going to stop moving as Demo Knight, yet taking it as face value with its just, you know, interesting wording, need a complete rework. Scout secondaries have always been fairly interesting as to how unique they are, and the full short is no exception to that. Pressing mouse 3 will perform a ground pound from whatever height you are, essentially having the man treads effect. Yet the difference from the man treads is that this also applies bleed to your target. Now, bleed usually is around 4 damage for 8 seconds, which caps out at 40 damage. So depending on how strong this thing were in terms of how much damage it were to deal, you could potentially one-shot most classes, and I don't know if that's a good idea. However, an air-based Scout playstyle is a fantastic idea, because the sheer amount of things Scout has that can increase his jump that only result in him taking less damage and moving around, you know, there's no way to really capitalise on the damage of extra jumps, and I think this is a fantastic idea. I'm really scared, as we've had nothing but fantastic ideas so far. Now, last time when we had nothing but fantastic ideas, they were quite literally all just TFC weapons. So I'm really scared about these. But I have faith in my Discord server. But long story short, so far we've had some pretty fantastic ideas. I guess on the topic of TFC modded weapons, we should give some disclaimers. First of all, I don't play the TFC modded version, I don't really know what it is. Second, I don't have the time, nor resources, nor manpower to sort these weapons. They're just uploaded, about only the good ones are sent to me, so about 80% are sent to me, and then I sort them, and about 40% make it into the video. And the only other thing I should say is that currently we are looking at weapons from November 21st. That's how backlogged I am with these things. So while there is a filtration process, I don't know if an idea is original. I purely know whether it will make good content for a video or not. And considering how it was only last video that we put out the disclaimer of to not have any TFC weapons, there might be some within the next videos, I'm not too sure. Anyway, the sticky bit launcher here is a really cool idea that I just wish was in the base game in some form. Stickies stick to enemy players. Fantastic idea. This comes at the cost of no random critical hits, and stickies fizzling when landing on terrain, and a 15% damage penalty. Now, that fizzling on terrain is a difficult thing. The way I would balance this is to give it a faster projectile speed so that you could potentially hit more stickies. As just having the base speed as is, yeah, I understand you can charge them, but that wouldn't be too effective as you'd have to take time to charge, and in the time you charge, your enemy's moving about and maybe they've walked off screen entirely. But nevertheless, this is a great concept that could be fantastically worked upon. So we are going to pop this into maybe just a little bit weak, or maybe even too weak, purely because the ability to not have stickies stick to surfaces makes sense on paper. What I would have done instead is make them have a massive damage penalty when put on surfaces. But then again, they'd at least still be on surfaces, but not having them being put on surfaces at all is actually quite weak. But fantastic idea regardless. The Technomancer is a concept that's always stuck out to me, but I just could never really find out as to why. I've seen this one floating around the server for a very long time, and it's a little bit complex, so let me explain it to the best of my ability. So, this is an engineer weapon. It replaces buildings with NVM robots that follow the engineer, and you get to choose which bots you can, a bit like how Spy can choose disguises. You can build 4 robots, 1 per class, and each robot costs 100 metal. Now, the reason I said this one stuck out to me is because this is a completely and utterly horrible idea to implement into the game. Okay, you know, it's a cool design, and we always need more battle engineer stuff, but this is not the way to go about it whatsoever. Unless these things had a damage nerf or something, you could have a medic following you could have a heavy following you, a scout, and even like a pyro or something to reflect projectiles. Do these have ammo? You know, do these robots have an ammunition, or do they just have infinite ammo? When you start asking questions like that, you know you've found a bad idea. But, you know, I'm not here to make fun. It's a cool idea, but it could never work in game. I do want to quickly say that as someone who's been out of TF2 since like 2020, the last Christmas I played in TF2 was 2019. And I've come back, and these maps are incredible. Like this one we're on right now, is it called Brewery or something? I found the frame rate to actually be a little bit inconsistent on this one. I tried on multiple different days. But it's a fantastic map, and I love it. And then, oh, Emerge. Emerge might be one of my new favourite maps in the entire game. And then there's this one that looks like Upward. Anyway, let's talk about this heavy donut. You know, a sandwich item or a lunchbox item even that takes damage to charge is a really cool idea. So much so that I think that will probably be something related to our next weekly challenge episode. Now, whether this is the right way to go about it or not, I'm not overly sure. Permanently adding 75 health to your heavy essentially means you only ever have to eat this once, and I'm going to assume if you swap off it, you don't get to keep the bonus. Now, that might sound overpowered, however, I'd like to actually tell you this thing doesn't specify how much health it heals at all. So, by base, we're going to assume it heals nothing. I mean, technically it only heals 75 health, but whether this was a mistake on the creator's part, or an intentional game design, we don't know. But so far, this seems to be a lunchbox item that literally only heals 75 health. And you can probably guess where this one's going. So, in all fairness, I will assume this was maybe just a mistake on the person who made this, and they forgot to implement how much health this thing heals. But far, far too weak. A heavy lunchbox item that doesn't heal is worse than the buffalo steak sandwich. This thing only heals 75, and yeah, it gives you an extra 75 max health. But that's it. Those who are watching the last episode of this series might realise I started tweaking halfway through. And that's not really going to happen this time, as when I made that I was, well, I think it was like 2, 3 in the morning, and it's currently 1 o'clock, or PM. So I'm perfectly sane at the moment. Anyway, let's talk about the lightning rod. And before we start, I will say the guy who makes these ones in particular, Sim with Milk, he always has these really cool gradients on the images, and I really like them. I helped show him how to do the very first one, which was like a Vaccinator Medic hybrid, and you can always recognise this guy's weapons. Anyway, so this is the lightning rod. It has a plus 20% heal rate, plus 20% Medibeam range, and a 10% Ubercharge rate, and this comes at the cost of Medibeam hit detection, completely changed. Now, this is apparently a hit scan tracking based Medibeam that uses the stock Uber. Now, obviously he's listed some hammer units as to how far this thing would travel, and it heals in bursts of 4 HP instead of a continuous stream. But, bursts of 4 HP? Per what? Per second? Per elephant? I'm not gonna lie to you, Sim has some pretty good ideas for weapons, but they always don't seem to have very good downsides. And whether this is a downside or not, I'm not too sure. I guess you could consider this a rework. But purely the fact that you're changing Medibeam hit detection is one of those things like projectile speed. You can't mess around with it because people rely on it ever so dearly. You know, you can't make a weapon, for example, that I learned from my Bizarre Bargain video a while ago. You can't make a rocket launcher that increases projectile speed with every hit, as people won't like it because it throws off their muscle memory. This is a bit like that. So, while this is a pretty good idea, I don't think it could be implemented. Right, well, the lightning rod, I can't wait to get a large comment in the comment section explaining how this thing was actually supposed to work. But long and short, just as is, it can't go in the game. One other thing I should say before we continue is that I will start to run out of certain footage for certain classes at this point. I recorded a lot of footage for this video because I didn't actually know how long it's going to be, but there are some classes I just naturally forgot to record for, like Spy and Medic. I think I had about 4 people message me on Discord afterwards, after the last video, saying that I could use some of their footage, and it's a very kind offer. It's very kind. Thank you so much. However, I will refrain from using other footage purely because, well, there will always be some issues down the road with it. You know, like with the whole, hate to bring up this as Sniper Wolf and all that kind of stuff, but it was her old husband, her ex-husband even, who used to record all her gameplay. And I think now he's pressing charges. So I'm gonna... Thank you very much. It's a very kind offer, but I will refrain from it. Now, the old best here is another one of those ideas that we've had today that is just cool. You know, so you can move at max speed while scoped in, and reduced zoom when scoped. There's obviously a downside, but I'm not too sure why it's not listed as one. You cannot charge your shots with this gun and 20% damage penalty on body shots. Now, obviously, those negatives are quite harsh. However, you can move at full speed while scoped. As someone who doesn't play sniper, even I know how good that is. Because you have a massive advantage against other snipers. This is essentially the sniper weapon that counters other snipers, as you'd still be dealing the 150 damage to them with a headshot, yet you'd be moving at essentially double their speed. Their muscle memory would be all over the place and they wouldn't be able to catch up whatsoever. So this is a fantastic counter to sniper, but maybe not so much to anything else. It's funny to think that I could potentially rank a counter to the strongest class in the game as quite weak. Now, I really don't know where to put this one, as obviously it counters snipers incredibly well, and sniper is the strongest class in the game, let's not deny it. But then again, the inability to charge, there are probably like a few people screaming in the comments about that. You can't one-shot every class in the game with this. You wouldn't be able to one-shot, say, heavies or soldiers, and there's probably some others with different like demo men, for example, and pyros even. So, you know, I think this is going to be our first ever potential, purely because it's a good idea, but the inability to charge your shots really does damage snipers' role as a whole. Well, I keep using the beginnings of these as like intermissions to talk about other things. I was going to say, the music will be the same throughout this video, as I don't have the time to implement every other track, but it will be different in the next, so don't worry. And you know, it's nice music, but I can understand how it might get irritating. It'll be changed in the next one, don't worry lads. Now again, another fantastic idea in the old scrap tooth. So this gun extends burn time against burning players, so I assume it maybe deals a base amount of afterburn, I'm not entirely too sure. And it's 15% more accurate, so that you can really deal more afterburn. Yet at the same time it has 40% less pellets per shot. Now, this is probably the most unique weapon we're ever going to cover here. So afterburn, obviously, pretty strong mechanic. Depending on who you ask, sometimes it's a bit weak actually. Now, maybe this gun doesn't deal any afterburn damage, I think that's what it's meant to be. However, when you shoot someone who is taking afterburn damage, be it by your pyro or someone else's, it will extend their time by 1.5 seconds. It's amazingly original ideas like this that make me realise why I love doing this series to begin with. I do groan on and moan about this series in my Discord, yet sometimes you get real bangers, and they're just... You think about it and you think, Valve, why aren't these in the game? Now, I guess other issues we should talk about, maybe it should cap up to a certain point, like maybe an extra 4.5 seconds of afterburn, because depending on how fast the firing speed and the clip size of this thing is, you could just infinitely deal 6 loads of 1.5 to your enemy's afterburn, and they'd never get put out. But at the end of the day, this is a really cool idea. Well done to whoever came up with this. God, okay, you know, I really hope this isn't a TFC classic idea, because it's just so cool. I am going to put it in a bit strong, purely because, you know, the firing speed and the clip size of this thing would make the difference, and the fact that it doesn't specify that it caps. However, at the same time, that's a really cool idea. Well done whoever came up with that. Alright, well our next one here is an interesting one. The idea of a healing shotgun is one that's been thrown around for the longest time within the TF2 community, and the sub-sandwich shotgun is a pretty good example of that. First stat I want to talk about is that this weapon heals you, obviously, when you deal damage to the enemy. However, it also heals your teammates when you shoot them. And I just want to quickly make amends, as this person has tried to balance this weapon, with each pellet dealing around 10 health, yet capping up close and capping up far. And this incredible power comes at the cost of a 34% smaller clip size, 10% slower reload speed, 25% slower firing speed, and health from all other sources is halved, and overheal is also reduced to half as well. Now, I just don't know how I feel about this one. I just don't know. Heavy's strongest playstyle currently is Cart Heavy. That's the definitive best way to play him, as you get infinite ammo and healing, and it's actually quite a force to be reckoned with. Yet this thing would cut that in half. This will also cut in half Overheal, his second strongest mechanic, as well he's incredibly slow and large, and having a nice bit of Overheal keeps him alive for much longer. The third downside to this would be healing your teammates. Now, the ability to shoot your teammates at a 10% slower firing speed, I think it was, while still healing them for every shot hit, is incredibly overpowered. I'm going to tell you now, we are putting this weapon into needs reworks. However, the core idea of a sub-sandwich shotgun is one that could potentially be fleshed out, as many people have been talking about it for many years. But I don't know if this is the way to go about it. If I were to pick a worst stat on this weapon, it would be the healing of teammates. If it were just healing to heavy, maybe we could see it passable. Obviously, the healing to teammates is designed to counteract the fact that you can't throw a sandwich anymore because it's a shotgun, yet it just can't be implemented to the game as is. Cool idea, always a cool idea. No hate to whoever created it, but just no. So this next one is another interesting one, and once again it's by Sim with Milk. This is the Rug Bomber, which honestly sounds a bit like a sexual innuendo or a slur, depending on who you're asking, and you can charge this weapon to fire multiple sticky bombs at a time. Now, this thing also has a massive 40% less self-damage, and a faster 10% reload speed. This comes at the cost of a 20% damage penalty and charged stickies having a 0.4 second longer detonation time. Now, when Sim originally joined the Discord server when we made it public, I think he joined quite early. He was more of a critique to my content, which I greatly appreciated. You can learn from criticism, you can't learn from praise. I would much rather have criticism than praise any day of the week. And he worded it constructively and informatively as well, and I greatly appreciated it. His main issue with my videos were usually that of the balancing ones, as balancing obviously is going to be a hot topic, yet he gave me a third eye insight as to what my balancing might imply. Now, Sim, if you're watching this, I'm going to discredit everything you ever just said about my balancing videos, because this is the single worst balanced weapon I've ever seen in my life. First of all, I hope I have a clip long enough to illustrate how much this infuriates me, purely because, let's start with the 20% damage penalty. So, 5 fully charged sticky bombs, obviously they're not charged in terms of damage, they're charged in terms of the realms of this weapon. 5 sticky bombs, each with 20% less damage, accounts to 4 sticky bombs. Now, 4 sticky bombs is enough to kill every class in the game except for heavy. Why does this thing have a 40% self-damage negation penalty? So, you can launch 5 sticky bombs and then you can jump with them at full force. Not even the sticky launcher can do that. Why does this thing have a 10% faster firing speed? Why? And yeah, I get the 0.4 second delay on the stickies. The Scottish resistance has 0.8. And apparently that's considered bad. This is half of that. Sim, I greatly appreciate you coming into the server, giving me insight to my videos. And likewise, if anyone's watching and they'd like to do that, please, I beg you do. If you have any criticisms, leave them below. I will learn from them. For example, one of my good friends nowadays messaged me the other day on Discord and said, hey, you should add timestamps to the videos to make categories. And as you can see, I've done that with this one, the previous one, and the one after. I am more than open to criticism as I learn from it. I don't learn from praise. But Sim, you cannot be throwing out points about me being me being terrible at balancing weapons when you're submitting weapons like these. I'm so sorry for ragging on you, Sim. I'm so sorry, but you're terrible at balancing weapons. Please, with that last one, let me refrain. I'm mostly joking. It's fine. I don't hate anybody. We joke, if you can't take a joke, maybe this isn't the right channel for you. But then, at the same time, the pig who wears the crown can't call the dog fat when he's heavy. And in case you don't know what that means, that's a British saying for get off my lawn. Anyway, this next one has a really funny name, the Schofield 6-shooter. Anyway, it's kind of tradition at this point for these videos to have like an engineer revolver in them, as it seems to be the #1 thing people want in the game of all things. So there we go, for the future I'll try and include a revolver in everyone. Anyway, this one does 25% increased damage at the cost of a slower 30% firing speed and a 50% clip size. This is obviously because this is not a pistol, it is a revolver, however we have to kind of compare it to the pistol as they take up the same slot. And by far the coolest thing in the world about the Schofield 6-shooter is that the alt-fire will fan the hammer and shoot all the bullets in the chamber at once with a massively increased spread radius. Honestly, I just don't see a problem with this being in the game, and I don't know why it's in the game to begin with. However, on its own, it's fine. On its own, it's fine. However, when we compare it to Engineer's secondaries, it is insanely underpowered. Compare the pistol to the Short Circuit, compare the pistol to the Wrangler, then compare this thing to the Wrangler. But then again, we're not ranking these against Engineer's secondaries, we're ranking them as how they are in a vacuum, and this is perfectly balanced as is. Another banger, whoever came up with this, well done. Then again, it is insanely weak compared to Engineer's secondaries right now, but that's not our ranking criteria. Wow, this video is much longer than the last one. Sorry about that. Anyway, this next one is called the Cold Plague, and it was part of a set, however, mainly for time constraints today, I'm only going to be covering this one. I guess for the next video, if I have enough time at the end, I can cover the other two in the set. Anyway, so this weapon has a large melee range, which is interesting, 20% base health increase, and while cloaked, damage does not debuff your cloak. And when you backstab a victim, you essentially do like a shootout bleed effect, and this will infect anyone who's nearby. This comes at the very, very interesting downsides of backstabs not instantly killing opponents, all crits are now mini crits, and if there are no enemies nearby, you will contract the plague instead. First of all, can I say, what a fantastically original idea. Maybe I really should have covered the rest of the set. But we have faced with this one the biggest problem a spy knife could ever possibly face, and it is that first downside. Does not instantly kill on backstab. I ask you all, What is the point in using this thing over the stock knife when the stock knife can instantly kill high priority targets? This thing, for example, would be really good when used on the cart, as you could backstab someone with your long melee range, the bleed would spread out and hit everyone. However, that's not what Spy's job is. Spy's job is to pick off single key targets like solo heavies, medics, or snipers on the back lines. So this is a fantastic idea for a knife, don't get me wrong, but if this were to be implemented, this would be the single worst knife ever, purely because of that first downside. If it doesn't insta-kill the target, what's the point? Like, imagine a sniper rifle, for example, that dealt 149 damage on a headshot. You know, you wouldn't use it. It's a good idea. It's a good idea, okay? And I'm actually going to put it in potential, but it can't be added to the game as is. Although, I do remember who made this, and they've also made a lot of Lon'qudor art. So thank you very much for that, you know who you are. And thank you for the submission. But I just don't think it's going to work. In the last video, just before this time, I asked people what they think about the concept of respect. For a little context on this, I'd always thought respect is earned. You have to earn someone's respect. You can't just be given it by demanding it. You know, dyeing your hair and demanding respect does not equal getting it. Yet, I met a teacher once, and he told me that all respect should be given as a baseline, but it's up to the person in question to decide whether they get to keep it or not. And this completely threw me for a loop. It really did. I didn't know how to treat strangers or people or whatever, purely because I was thinking too much about this. So I asked the comment section, I asked everyone what do they think about the concept of respect, and it seems to be most people agreed with me. Everyone should be given a base borderline respect when you meet them for the first time. We're going to call this basic human decency. You know, when you meet someone for the first time, you're not going to pull down the trousers or smack them in the face, that kind of stuff. This is basic human decency. And then your main respect should be earned. So I guess there are two levels of respect. Level 1, which is small base human decency, and level 2, which is your main respect. It should be earned, it shouldn't be given willy-nilly. So thank you everyone in the comments for helping me with that. It really sounds dumb, but that really did help me. I spent so much time thinking about this. Yet, I think, as a baseline, respect is earned. Anyway, let's talk about TF2. Now, the compact combustor here is quite something. So the fire has been replaced with a concentrated laser beam, and air-blasted projectiles automatically get crit boosted and cannot be knocked back, which is a very interesting concept. It's 25% damage bonus versus engineered buildings, and this comes at the cost of no afterburn. So this is essentially the non-flamethrower flamethrower. How this would work, I assume, is that the lasers only reach up to a certain margin, and therefore they can penetrate any players within that margin. A bit like, well, just like with MVM, with the MVM upgrade. So this wouldn't be like a map spanning laser, so it's not too bad, don't worry. And once again, this would have a much smaller hit radius, meaning that you really have to follow the target with your mouse and you couldn't just spray flames wherever. This is a really interesting concept, and I really do like it actually, but I'm just not too sure how strong it would be / weak if implemented. Where on earth do I start with this thing? I don't know. Well, I do think you can make a flamethrower without afterburn. I do think you can. Obviously, it would have to have some massive bonus, maybe an air blast flamethrower or something. I do think you can make one without afterburn. I don't know if this is the way to go about it, though. It's not that it's too strong. I'm going to put it in potential. It's not that it's too strong. It's just that I don't know what to do with it. Now, I know there were 3 other weapons on the tier list after this, but I think we'll save this for the next video, as this is going to be our last one, as we're almost at 40 minutes. That is almost double the time of the last episode of this, which at the time was the longest video I'd ever made. So let's wrap this episode up by talking about the Flying Boozer. So you gain full crits after sticky jumping, and a user doesn't take any full damage if you get a kill mid-air. This comes at the cost of a minus 15% damage penalty, minus 15% max health on wearer, and you cannot random crit. So this is more than just a market gardener for demo. This is a different playstyle entirely. The demo has the ability to pre-place bombs. Unlike the soldier who can't, he has the rocket jump on command. Demo can put a sticky somewhere else, put a sticky where he knows he's going to land, and therefore can constantly stay airborne. So this is a completely new playstyle for the market gardener is what I'm trying to say, and as to how strong it is, I honestly think it might be a little bit weak. It's a fantastic idea, obviously, don't get me wrong, but just thinking about it from a baseline, it's not the strongest thing on the planet. Final weapon of the day. I know we've got 3 down here. I'll cover them first in the next video, do not worry. But the sticky bottle, jump bottle, whatever you want to call it, I forgot what it's called. Really good idea. I'm going to pop it in a little bit weak, purely because you have to constantly be airborne. And I know taking full damage is a nice thing, but obviously, you know, you have to get a kill when you do. And for the final review of today, let's just take a look. Are there any I'd like to rebalance? Well, honestly, I think we're pretty good as is. The only one I maybe would have changed were the falling boots. I might have put them in a little bit weak, as, for example, this being a secondary, you are giving up something like the pistol, you're giving up the pretty boys, the mad milk and whatnot. But then again, by our criteria with the engineer weapon, we weren't ranking these among scouts other secondaries, we were ranking these in a vacuum. So I think I might put them back where they are. Maybe I'll put the Gunspy revolver in a bit weak. I think maybe that's what we'll do. I think we had 2 Gunspy revolvers this time around. I can't actually remember. But long story short, these weapons were probably the best we've ever had. And I know that doesn't sound like it from all the ones we got down here. But generally, these weapons were not only original, they were fantastically crafted, and most of them were balanced. So well done, guys. Well done. This has been our best episode by far. Anyway, thank you very much everyone for watching. We're going to end it here. Sorry if there are any TFC weapons in this video. I might in future run them past my friend who does play TFC and even does some SFM work for some of the stuff. So in the future, I will hope to try cut out some of those. Thank you very much for watching. Congratulations to the weekly challenge winner. I'll see you later down the sunny road.